Okay, time to review the Sliders book. That's weird. And that is too. Mike Sano? Michael, just the man I wanted to see. You wouldn't have anything to do with the disappearance of my Sliders novel and my Sliders DVDs, would you? That's not important right now. What's important is this. My phone? No, it's much more than a phone now. This is a fully functional Sliders-type interdimensional transport device. You turned my phone into the timer? Yep, now you have the ability to travel to parallel universes. But I already can. It's kinda my thing. Hell, I have a transporter that I can use whenever I want. Yes, well, I'm a little wary about transporters since the whole split me in half thing. So I figured I'd make another method of travel that won't split someone in half if it malfunctions. Okay, I guess that's kind of cool. Indeed. And I need a bit of a favor from you. You want me to test it, don't you? Yeah. Got it. So, is it random or can I input coordinates? Random for now, but I'll implement coordinate entering into the next prototype. Fair enough, I guess the Sliders review can wait. I put it off this long. Good luck. I've set the timer for a half hour, and that should be a sufficient amount of time for you to look around and then slide back. Well, here goes nothing.
What if you found a portal to a parallel universe? What if you could slide into 1,000 different worlds? Where it's the same year, and you're the same person, but everything else is different? And what if you can't find your way home?
Rough landing. This is why I prefer transporters. Well, this world looks remarkably similar to mine. Well, I have a half hour here, I might as well look around a bit. Watch me. Well, if you insist. Oh my god, you should have seen it. I mean, it was great. This thing, this weird thing, this big weird thing, just right here, it came out of nowhere. Just whoosh, whoosh. It was crazy.
Michael!
I think I just knocked out the power. September 13th. My attempts to create the world's first anti-gravity device have taken a decidedly bizarre turn. Anti-grav? Nuh-uh. Something else? Definitely. But what? Yes! September 21st. After days of careful analysis, I've come to the conclusion that the center of the ring could be the mouth of a tunnel, or a gateway to another existence. September 25th. For 3 days now, I've been sending objects into the void. Toys, books, video games, all vanished without a trace. Last night, I perfected a timing device to bring objects back from wherever it is that they're going. So I sent an object in and set the timer for 20 minutes. And the object didn't return. Instead, this returned in its place. A DVD box set of this show called Sliders. And I've never heard of it. And get this, neither has the internet. This is a show that doesn't exist in this reality. It's from a parallel universe with different TV shows. And the guy on this show is doing what I'm doing. It's like seeing myself in another reality or another existence. And if that wasn't amazing enough, this came out after it. It's a novel based on the show. And think about this from my perspective. I'm a book reviewer, and a book that doesn't exist on this world just falls into my lap. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. September 26th. I've been thinking about sending a living being through the vortex, and I know what you're thinking. Just send the camera through, but I can't. The electromagnetic field around the vortex nukes the picture. So I've come to the conclusion that I have to enter the vortex myself, and I will do so tomorrow. I have one thing left to do, though. Review this book. September 27th. Well, here goes nothing. I've set the timer for 1 hour, but, in the event I don't make it back, I have specific instructions for whoever finds this disc. So, on the computer is the review I made last night. If I'm not back in 1 week, upload it. And, hey, don't throw out any of my stuff. Who knows, I might make it back one day. Well, I might as well watch his video to get some ideas for mine. Hello and welcome to the Literary Lair. Hopefully by the time this goes up, I'll have more to say. But, long story short, I think I found a way to cross the Einstein-Rosen-Podolsky bridge and travel to parallel universes. I haven't gone yet, but this book came out of it. Sliders, the novel. What is Sliders? That's a valid question because it doesn't exist on this Earth. This came from another dimension. And that's what Sliders is about. A group of people traveling to various parallel universes. So, before I cross the bridge, I want to be the first person on this Earth to review this book. So, let's get to it. The cover is pretty standard. It's a publicity shot from the show, featuring the 4 lead actors with a colorful background and the show's logo, and the author's name and the show's creators' names, along with saying that it's an all-new original novel based on the Fox TV series. Let's get to the book itself. The book opens up with Quinn Mallory, played by Jerry O'Connell, in what we later learn is an Earth run by Soviet Russia, and then some exposition on Quinn's father, something that we never really saw on the show. The most we got was that he was a good father and he pushed Quinn to succeed, and that he died after getting hit by a car when Quinn was younger, much like Pete, Rose Tyler's father from Doctor Who. In the book, we learn that he was a really attentive father, telling Quinn that history is important when Quinn got frustrated by a school assignment. We also learn that Quinn's dad was a theoretical physicist, which explains Quinn's affinity for science. There's also a bit that suggests that Quinn's father's death was a suicide, and he jumped in front of the car because he was unsatisfied with the way his career was going. After the exposition ends, we go and see the events leading up to Quinn ending up on Soviet Russia world, where Quinn stops on his way home from school to listen to a homeless man in the park as he shouts about how America's capitalist and imperialist ways will lead it to fall eventually, and how communism is the form of government that the world should follow. Quinn listens for a bit, but soon heads for Doppler Electronics, the computer store where he works, to go check up on Wade Wells, played by Sabrina Lloyd, his friend, who is a girl, but not a girlfriend. He thinks of her more as a sister. He wants to share a scientific discovery with her, but he can't really figure out what the discovery was, so he decides against it, and instead goes to a video store to buy some DV tapes for his camera. Because this was 1995 and cameras still used tapes. He gets home and greets his mom before heading to his basement laboratory to check on his experiment. Quinn starts to watch his previously recorded tapes, giving us a little knowledge on what his experiment is. In an attempt to create anti-gravity, he ended up creating some sort of vortex. Quinn desperately wants to know what's on the other side, and decides that he'll open it up and go through the vortex the next day. The next morning, Quinn wakes up and has a conversation with his mom before heading to his car to leave for class, but not before having a conversation with his attractive neighbor, Stephanie. She would be girlfriend material, if it wasn't for the fact that she has a boyfriend. Quinn goes to class, sitting through his physics lecture taught by Professor Maximilian Arturo, played by John Rhys Davies, where Arturo grills the class, who mostly don't know the answers to the questions that he asks, except for Quinn, but Quinn doesn't let Arturo know that, miming the answer to his classmates right before Arturo tells them the answer. Arturo's class finishes, and Quinn heads to work at Doppler, seeing Wade tell some customers that they should wait a few weeks to get the newest computers, which annoys their boss Hurley to no end. Wade tries to hint to Quinn that she's looking to be more than friends, but he's oblivious. Quinn finishes up at work after getting on Hurley's bad side and heads home to plan his trip. He plans to go through the next morning, leaving a video behind to explain his disappearance should he not return, and activates the vortex device, hopping into the vortex and emerging on the other side, in his room. Seeing that his experiment was seemingly a failure, he heads out to class, but doesn't notice a subtle change to his room. His Casablanca poster no longer has Humphrey Bogart on it. It has another actor on it, Ronald Reagan. He goes out and opens the gate, which doesn't squeak as it usually does, and he starts driving. Noticing that the radio host was saying some weird things, but as that radio host was known for weird and sometimes offensive comedy, he writes it off as a bad joke. Then he stops his car at a red light, only for the other drivers to get unnecessarily angry at him. And this makes him start to think, and after hearing more from the radio host, he realizes that the experiment did work and that he is on a parallel Earth, right before seeing a billboard for Elvis live at the Mirage. He immediately drives home and sees that his mother is not the mother that he knew, and is married to their gardener Jake and pregnant with Jake's child, which freaks Quinn out right before his vortex device activates again and returns him to his own universe. Quinn notes that the experience of flying through the vortex felt like sliding and decides to name what he created Sliding. He heads to class to share his discovery with Arturo, but Arturo is infuriated and angry at Quinn, who of course is confused, since he spent the morning on another Earth. Arturo storms out and Quinn's classmates congratulate him on being man enough to show his face again after standing up to Arturo and bashing his theories. Quinn rushes to Doppler to find Wade, but finds out that he also did some damage there, telling his boss to stick his computers where the sun don't shine, and got himself fired, and kissed Wade. Quinn denies ever doing that and rushes home, finding that he had apparently groped Stephanie as well. He goes to his lab and finds that the equation on his chalkboard, which had previously been incomplete, was now solved. Who solved it? Well, Quinn did, of course. Just not this Quinn. Another Quinn reveals himself, and reveals that all the damage that Quinn was accused of was the result of his double messing around. And his double asks him what the name of the device is, and Quinn comes up with the term gizmo, but the other Quinn derides him for it. And I also hate that term, so I'm just gonna call it what they end up calling it in the show, and call it the timer. The other Quinn reveals that he's been sliding for some time and that there are infinite worlds to slide to. But sliding is random without exact coordinates, so it's like a roulette wheel. You'll almost never hit the same spot twice. The other Quinn's timer starts to pull him back into his world, but not before he warns Quinn not to activate the timer early for a reason he can't disclose because he disappears before finishing his sentence. Then we get to meet the final character we need to introduce, Rembrandt the Crying Man Brown, played by Clavant Derricks. Rembrandt is a washed-up R&B singer preparing to sing the anthem at a Giants game to try to kickstart his career again. As he preps, his manager watches an old music video of him, singing a song that I genuinely enjoy. Like, not ironically or anything, I really like this song. Here's a small taste.
Oh, I'm gonna cry like a man. Cry like as hard as I can. Yes, I can.
Anyway, Rembrandt starts driving to Candlestick Park as Wade and Arturo meet at Quinn's doorstep after they both wanted to check on Quinn due to his previous behavior. They go inside and Quinn introduces them to sliding, deciding to test it out themselves, setting the timer for 5 hours. However, since Quinn was previously the only one who used the vortex, he turns the power up, accidentally swallowing up Rembrandt's Cadillac, which was passing Quinn's house as Rembrandt took a detour to avoid traffic, into the vortex. The group emerges with Quinn, Wade, and Arturo observing the new world they landed on, which happened to be a world that had apparently went through another ice age. They check Quinn's house and find that this version of him had a sister that he didn't, and they go outside to find Rembrandt, whose car is plowed straight into an iceberg in the middle of the road. They huddle in his car to brave the cold of the next few hours before the slide, but Quinn is forced to activate the timer early due to an ice tornado heading straight for them. Arturo, Wade, and Rembrandt escape, and Quinn nearly misses the slide, but he gets in just in time. Instead of emerging back in Quinn's basement, however, they emerge in Golden Gate Park, which Arturo surmises was the thing that Quinn's double was warning him about. Activating the timer early has unforeseen effects, such as altering the exit location of the vortex. Rembrandt heads out to catch a taxi, and Wade goes to call her parents as Quinn and Arturo check the park out, finding that they aren't quite home. The statue of Abe Lincoln that was in the park is now Vladimir Lenin. What cinches the deal is when the perspective of the book changes and we see a senator talking with his secretary, Stephanie, Quinn's neighbor, about one of his colleagues, Maximilian Arturo. Rembrandt takes the cab and finds some odd circumstances, but chalks them up to him being stressed and paranoid after the slide. He tells the cab driver, Pavel Kurlienko, to take him to Candlestick Park when the radio turns on. An anthem plays and Pavel starts saluting, along with every other driver on the road, as Rembrandt sees when he looks out the window. What convinces him he's not home is when he hands Pavel money for the toll, and he gets a bunch of Kalashnikovs aimed at him by the authorities. Wade also has an odd experience at a phone booth, which is humorously PT&T, People's Telephone and Telegraph, instead of AT&T, American Telephone and Telegraph. She tries to call her house, but ends up getting the secret police sent after her, causing her to run away, where she runs into Quinn and Arturo, who are watching a rally on television featuring the senator, who turns out to be Kenny Reeves, otherwise known as Crazy Kenny, the homeless man Quinn listened to at the start of the novel. Arturo takes them to find a food cart, and Rembrandt is placed in a cell where his cellmate tries to grill him for info, asking if he is part of the American underground, as his money is the calling card of the rebels. Rembrandt tries to get the guy to believe that he's a traveler from a parallel dimension, but big surprise, the guy doesn't believe it. Arturo finds a food cart and orders a kielbasa, giving the vendor an American bill, but instead of calling the cops, the vendor leads the sliders away from the secret police chasing Wade and brings them to the base of the American underground, as he recognizes Wade, who on this Earth is the leader of the American underground. Rembrandt is taken to be interrogated by the Soviets, and they reveal that Rembrandt Brown died on this world in the Detroit Uprising, and that they believe that Rembrandt is using his double's name for nefarious counterculture purposes. The interrogators' bosses are more interested in Rembrandt's money, though, because they're dated to be recent, despite the fact that America fell many years earlier. The interrogator starts to interrogate Rembrandt, and Rembrandt tells his story, that he was zapped into the vortex by some guy, and his car ended up in an iceberg and all that, but the interrogator obviously doesn't buy it, telling Rembrandt that if he gives him something to work with, he'll fight for him. That makes Rembrandt recognize the interrogator, who on Rembrandt's world was a shyster TV lawyer named Ross J. Kelly. That confuses Kelly and his bosses, as he was a TV lawyer on Soviet world as well, but only for rich Soviets, which Rembrandt is neither. They realize that Rembrandt is sticking to the story, and they figure that he's a master manipulator trying to subvert the communist dystopia, so they sentence him to go before the People's Court. Quinn, Wade, and Arturo are introduced to Wilkins, the second-in-command of the Underground, and Wade's double's lover. They find out that Wade was captured by the Soviets and is being kept in prison until she is to be shipped to New Leningrad, Washington, D.C., for a public execution. They DNA test Wade and find out that the other Wade is still in her cell, meaning that the Underground is willing to believe their story of their origins. The only person held under scrutiny is Arturo, who on this world is the Citizen General, and the guy who runs the prison that Wade's double is being held at. Upon learning that, Arturo laments that he is always a leader of men, no matter the circumstances. Arturo starts to research the history of the world and finds that it's a world where the domino theory worked in reverse. America lost the Korean War, and as a result, the USSR got more and more powerful until they eventually toppled America and took over. They borrow some tech so that Arturo and Quinn can repair the timer, and while looking around, Wade discovers where Rembrandt is, on the People's Court. No, I'm serious. The People's Court TV show. and the judge running it is actually the judge who was on the show at the time, Judge Joseph Wapner. That's pretty awesome. Anyway, Rembrandt goes through the trial, but it's a sham, and they sentence him to life in an Alaskan gulag, and they plan to move him in the morning, giving the underground an idea for a plan. They need Commander Wells, and these sliders need Rembrandt. They figure that they can use Arturo and have him pose as his double, so they can get in and spring Wade's double and Rembrandt and get out quickly. They take Arturo to the prison, which happens to be on the university campus, and they get inside, with Arturo getting them in by pretending they're part of a readiness drill. They get in, but the guard at the gate calls Arturo's house, getting the real Citizen General on the phone, and he is none too happy about the deception. Meanwhile, Rembrandt's guard is about to start torturing him when Quinn and the rebels show up to get him out, while Wade and Wilkins went off to get Wade's double. The mission seems to be going well until the alarms go off, and they have to get out quickly, having a firefight with the Soviet soldiers. Quinn looks for Wade in the fight and grabs her to get her to safety, and they drive off, but Wade is shot. Quinn stops the van, and the underground's doctor shows up, but the prognosis isn't good. Quinn starts to have a breakdown as Wade lays dying when Wade shows up and asks what's going on. It turns out that Quinn had grabbed Wade's double, and that she had died, which is okay for Wilkins, since she died a more noble death than the public execution that the Soviets would have inflicted on her. Wilkins does have one final favor to ask of Wade, and that's to make a propaganda tape with evidence of the date, so that they can keep up their subversion and have their Wade make one final stand. Wade agrees, and the underground packs up to leave and finds a new place since their location is basically compromised. Quinn and Arturo repair the timer and they run off, nearly getting killed by the secret police from PT&T, and they slide out, landing back in Golden Gate Park, where Crazy Kenny is no longer a senator and is sleeping behind the statue of Abe Lincoln. They hail a taxi, and it turns out that Pavel is the driver, which puts Rembrandt on edge until Pavel reveals that he does recognize Rembrandt as the Crying Man, and Pavel is a fan of his music. They return to Quinn's house and do the gate check. It squeaks, and they celebrate their good fortune that they have returned to their own universe. They have dinner at Quinn's and discuss what they should do next with the timer. Arturo wants to destroy it, citing Einstein and Oppenheimer after their discoveries led to the atomic bomb, and Wade wants to keep it a secret, but their conversation halts when the front door opens, and a man walks in. That man is Michael Mallory, Quinn's late father. The sliders realize that their sliding days are far from over, and Quinn drops his wine glass on the floor, ending the novel. And that was Sliders the novel. Was it good? It was awesome! It not only was a very faithful adaptation of the original script for the pilot, but it also gives new life to all the material that was left on the cutting room floor, like the info about Quinn's father and the new characters like Stephanie, along with letting us see actual scenes with the alternate Arturo and alternate Wade. And I would highly recommend this book, if I didn't own the only copy on this earth. But hey, if you're from a world where sliders exist, check out this book. It's phenomenal. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of the Literary Lair, you can hit that subscribe button. And if you have any comments or complaints about the video, you can put those in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this video, show it to your friends and share it around the internet. And maybe consider supporting the show on Patreon. And I'll see you guys on the other slide. Welp. Gotta go. Yoink.